A lot of my students keep telling me that when they started using a DAW, it was not usually Logic Pro. It was usually something else. But in some way, they started learning Logic Pro and then they found my channel. So they wanted to learn Logic Pro from me. And a lot of my students always had this question of how to actually choose the right DAW for a process. They even had questions whether certain DAWs are really good for mixing. Probably some DAWs are good for recording. Is there a differentiation between some DAWs? Maybe one DAW is better than the other. Is there something like that? And I always used to address them during classes, but when a lot of people through online, when they also started asking me these questions, I thought it is going to be an ideal video. So in today's video, I'm going to give you a guidance on which DAW you need to choose. Based on that only, your whole idea of production is going to blossom. So choosing your DAW is important. So I'm going to give you some guidelines on which DAW you need to choose. And before we enter into the video, if you're new here, I'm Florina Jain, otherwise known as Flow of Music, and I put out a lot of music production related videos. So if that's something that you like, then you need to subscribe. So let's get into the video. Now, if you want the most quickest answer to this question of which DAW you need to really choose, the answer is a DAW that works quickly and that you're comfortable with. If that's all that you need to know, then you can just skip this video and go ahead. But if you really want to understand in depth on the priorities that you need to look at or a small comparison between different DAWs, then you need to stick further in this video to understand all that. The first thing is that no DAW is better than another one. So when I say I use Logic Pro, it doesn't mean that Logic Pro is better than FL Studio. Nothing like that. The basic principles are the same. Every DAW can record, every DAW can mix, every DAW can master, every DAW has plugins, VSTs, functions like automation and then auto-tune, and all these things are common. The way you approach it, the way you achieve something, that's different in every DAW. So maybe in a particular DAW you can do it in one step, but in some other DAWs you will have to do 3 steps to achieve the same thing. That's the only difference. But apart from that, function-wise, everything is the same. I'm going to talk about my experience, and I've used a couple of DAWs for a lot of work, and I'm going to tell you the experience that I've had. So the first DAW I tried was Ableton Live. Now I just chose Ableton Live not because someone told me to. I just wanted to learn production and I just started researching and I saw Logic Pro, but I realized that Logic Pro was only for Mac, which I didn't have at that time. So I decided to choose Ableton Live. That's how the whole choosing process happened. And then I downloaded Ableton Live and I started using it. I had no idea what a DAW was at that time. Okay, so I'm just trying to learn about it. And as I was figuring things out, over time, I started to realize that it was a little trickier to mix and master in Ableton Live, and this is purely my experience. So I realized that making live sounds, live music or making EDM stuff was much more nicer to do on Ableton Live than on anything else. But if it is just mixing or mastering or recording or things like that, I found it a little difficult. I felt like there was a lot more complicated steps that I need to do to just record or just mix. A lot of routing was a little confusing for me. In terms of making live sounds, you want to bring in loops and you want to play them at random times and record live sounds like that. I thought Ableton was fantastic for that, but I personally didn't like it while mixing and mastering. Even though that was the starting stage, I found that a little bit to be complicated. So the next DAW that I tried out was StudioOne. Now, I didn't try it at my home. I was working in a studio as a recording engineer, and the DAW that they had was StudioOne. While it was good for recording, it was again a little confusing for me. I felt like it wasn't that user-friendly, and again it involved like a couple of more steps to be done to achieve the same simple process. Sometimes I felt like it was much more complicated than Ableton. I felt like that DAW was not comfortable for me. So later when I got a MacBook, I installed Logic and then I started working with Logic. Logic was so much easier for me to learn. Like I learned it very quickly, including shortcuts and all the routing, signal routing, everything was way easier to learn in Logic. It was very user-friendly, it was very comfortable to work with, and that is the only reason why I was stuck with Logic. I even tried Pro Tools after that because another studio had Pro Tools and I thought I should learn it in order to work in that studio, so I was trying Pro Tools. In my experience, what I understood was that Pro Tools was easier to do a recording session. Like you can do a lot of edits very quickly. You can achieve that using Logic also, Probably a little bit more extra steps you need to do. But in Pro Tools, everything was a little straightforward when it came to recording and everything was smooth. But then there were other complications, like for example, signal routing or bus tracks. All those things seemed a little complicated than Logic. Most commercial studios actually use Pro Tools for recording. Logic Pro is also a very common commercial DAW as well. But this was a problem I faced with Pro Tools, so I just stuck to Logic. I really chose this particular Logic Pro as my DAW because it was user friendly. It had a lot of simple ways to achieve a simple thing. It was not at all complicated. It was straightforward. I chose Logic Pro not because I feel like the output quality of a mixed track is better in Logic than in Pro Tools or than in Ableton. No, the quality is same. It's just how you work with it. It doesn't mean that if I record in Logic Pro, the quality is going to be bad than when I record it with Pro Tools. Nothing like that. Just because someone is using Logic Pro and is telling you that that is the best DAW doesn't mean it's going to be the best DAW for you. Maybe you're going to find it really difficult to use it. If you're not having Mac, you can't even use Logic Pro. All DAWs are the same. It's just how you achieve a particular process. That is different. When I had to switch from Ableton to Logic, and I never knew how to work with Logic, I also had this idea in my mind that sort of comfortable with Ableton because I was working with it for a while. Now I need to learn a DAW from scratch. Why do I have to come out of my comfort zone and do that? Sometimes you have to come out of your comfort zone. So comment whatever DAW you're using and we'll see which DAW most of my subscribers are using, and that's going to be an interesting poll. So let's see what DAW you all are using. I use Logic Pro, as you all know, but what DAW do you use? What DAW do you like? Just put that down in the comments. I hope this video was useful and I hope it gave you some kind of clarity. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in another video.